Hello chess friends and welcome to Jozarov's chess channel and welcome to the Magnus Carlsen Chess Tour finals in 2020. So we're now in the day 3, game 3. So the first game Magnus Carlsen won with the black pieces in the Berlin defense, and it was a great tense game, but I think the opening preparation by Hikaru wasn't good. He made slightly inaccuracies, and that's why I avoid to play the Berlin defense, or I avoid to play the Spanish game from white perspective, because there's simply too much theory for my taste. There are lines, there are even book lines till the move 30. It's really incredible. The Spanish game has so many sidelines, so many variations, and really particular tiny little things that you can make as a mistake, make also as an advantage. So as I said, it's simply so much theory that I really avoid it. I really like to go into sharp lines like the Sicilian, the King's Indian, where I really have this thematic plan. But the Rui Lopez, it's simply such a tiny battle all over the board. So you saw, if you want to see, really check out also this game 1, in which there are these improvements of particular lines that you can make, and Hikaru made really a couple of inaccuracies, and Magnus Carlsen punished all of them with a great performance and with a great endgame technique. So let's check out now the game 3. Now Hikaru didn't play his inaccuracy line, sort of. He, I think, checked out some better lines, and I've asked myself this question: does Magnus Carlsen, does Hikaru Nakamura have a team behind him which is preparing some lines? Because when the World Championship is going on, then we know that Magnus, for instance, goes with 4 seconds with his whole team, which is analyzing the particular lines. For instance, in the Berlin, or maybe in the Sicilian, they are analyzing particular improvements of the position of lines, and that's why I really ask myself this question: do they have a team now behind it? Because it seems to me that it's really a World Championship going on, because they're playing so accurate these lines, and if you make really a slightly mistake, then it's game over. So this game 3, that's why I'm mentioning here, because this game 3 has really a thematic endgame technique, and I think it's really sort of an alpha 0 stockfish endgame, which only the most brutal engines can see. It's not spottable sort of for the human eye. I really had my troubles to find the best next move, because in one particular moment when I watched the engine, I didn't want to see the current evaluation of the position. I really tried for myself to solve the endgame, and I really couldn't find the move. Maybe you can find it, because it was really such a thematic endgame, and it could lead into a draw. I'm not really revealing the result, but it was really a great game. So let's check out now the game 3. Again, Hikaru with the white pieces, and we have round 3 and 5. So e4 played by Hikaru, e5, knight to f3, knight to c6, bishop to b5, knight to f6. The same line in my previous analyzed game, so the game 1 from this match day: knight to f6, d3, bishop to c5, bishop takes c6. So most of the times now in the top grandmaster level, this line has been played. So d takes c6, here knight from b to d2 and castling. So again, I'm pointing out, for maybe those who are watching one of my videos for the first time, the idea now of white is to create a blocking system, because we don't have any more the bishop here. We want to keep a compact position in the center. We don't want to have this open position, because if the position gets too open, then the bishop pair could be really one tough one to face. And what the problem is, as I said again, what from black perspective is that you have troubles with this double pawn structure on the c file. You cannot advance pawns. You cannot also open the center, because white has this dominant d3 e4 setup, really this pawn central control so far. So you have to be patient here from black's perspective in order to make something happen. Here in the game, queen to e2, played by Hikaru, very important move, still staying compact on light squares. And now rook to e8. So we have knight to c4, knight to d7, bishop to g4. I'm repeating myself again, but let's see now this defensive line that you have as a good line, I believe, from white's perspective: h3, bishop to h5, and now bishop to e3. After bishop takes, here knight to d7, and now knight to g6, f6, and now knight to g3. So the idea now behind this setup of white is simply to kick away this light square bishop without further weakening pawn structure with potential g4. So that's only as a theory. But here Magnus again plays this move knight to d7. He doesn't go with this move bishop to g4. So it has been played many times, the bishop to g4 idea. Magnus didn't play it, and there was, as I said, this slightly inaccuracy which Hikaru made in the first game. He played the move bishop to e3, which was basically unnecessary because there is no more this threat of blacks to play this move bishop to g4, as black has temporarily blocked out his light square bishop with the move knight to d7. So far it's not necessary to play this line. So here Hikaru finds an improvement. He plays the move h4. What I like now about this game of Hikaru is that also he played in the previous game h4 followed with g3. This is a problem because you have weakened your light squares too much and you don't have any more the light square bishop on the board. So it's very important to keep at least some kind of a compact position on light squares. h4 is good, is playable, but as I said, in the previous game he played also g3. So that's why he had troubles in the continuation of the game on light squares and lost the game. So here after h4 we have h5, and this pardon me, a5. So this was also slightly inaccuracy by Magnus. He doesn't need to play this move a5. He can play a better move. It's the move b5, because here he can kick away the knight, and the problem now is that the bishop is blocked out. b5 is the suggested line by the engine, and now we can remaneuver again the knight to f6 and liberate our light square diagonal. So there is now no more the threat of this e5, because in the previous move you see there is this weakness, this e5, and in order to fix the position you have to play something like f6. That's why Magnus played knight to d7 in the first place and tries to remaneuver the knight. But now after the move a5, it gives again pardon me, Hikaru Nakamura the opportunity to simply push the pawn in h5. But as I said, b5, a better line, kicking away the knight, knight to e3, and now knight to f6. Now we can include our bishop into the game. We can play something like maybe knight to g4, forcing a trades of knights, and then sneak in with our bishop and have this very annoying pin on the knight against the queen. So better line, as I said, b5. Here Magnus played, as I said, a5, but Hikaru continues to push h5. Great move. You see here Hikaru in the previous game he played, it wasn't the same line but a similar idea. He played the move g3, which was really risky to weaken your light squares, because then the bishop can come into the game. So here we have h5, trying to creating at least some kind of tension on the king side, trying to split the pawns in front of the king, really weakening the pawn structure, forcing maybe a g6 move. Then the bishop can come into the game very active. So here b5 finally, but it's a little bit too late, because now after knight to e3 we have knight to f8 by Magnus. Now he's trying the same idea, knight to e6 followed with knight to d4 and knight to f4. So he wants to occupy these weak squares in white's position. These are clear targets because we have the so-called static center setup. Whenever you see that these pawns are like this, they cannot move in the center, then always you should search for these squares in order to create some kind of an outpost on this square. So far it's not possible, but as a long-term plan it could work. So here bishop to d2, and I like more the setup of Hikaru Nakamura's. In the previous game I think his pieces were a little bit loose on the board. As I said, when you face the bishop pair and you don't have the bishop pair, then you have to create really a compact position, sort of a really tough one to break. And now you see the pieces are really good connected here. So I really like more the setup of Hikaru's. Knight to e6 was played by Magnus, and now a4. And here we come to the critical moment of the game. Here the position is about equal, and here Magnus spent the most of his time, and he made a mistake. He should have proceeded here with the move knight to f4. And here black has really a comfortable game. After the move a4, probably what he was scared of are these tactical possibilities after a takes b5 and rook takes a5. It's really an alpha zero line, sort of. I really let the engine work here because, as I said, it's simply too much of theory and really so many strategies that you can apply in these types of setups. So knight to f4 leads now into a complicated line for white, basically. After queen to f1, queen to f6. You see now how the black pieces are sneaking in white's camp, and the problem is now you cannot castle anymore. Here after potential g3, you see you have this tactical shot knight to d3 and you lose the knight. So in order to keep some kind of activity here, white could proceed with the move h6 or play the move a takes b5. But after c takes b5, rook to a5, this is not something that that should worry you, because bishop to d7 is really a nice idea here for black, sacrificing a pawn. But now there are several troubles here on the back rank, because you haven't castled, and the queen is a little bit weird here on f1, although you have a good protection so far. But I think that Magnus missed a good line. Maybe here, after the move knight e6 and a4, Magnus played the move b4. And this is now a perfect pawn structure for the knights, because now I want to show you really this differences between pawn structures. So after the a4 move and the b5 still here, we have a dynamic pawn structure. So bishops love the dynamic pawn structure. After the move b4, we have the static pawn structure. Now the knights love these kinds of positions where no pawn moves are possible, and here there are clear targets in black's position. Knight to c4 is a possibility. Knight to f5, also a great move. So now here, after the move b4, Hikaru should have proceeded with the move knight to c4, simply attacking further here the pawn on e5, and the black would be forced to play the move knight to d4. So you saw Magnus makes a slight inaccuracy, then Hikaru makes a slight inaccuracy. So here, after the move knight to d4, knight takes d4, and after e takes d4, you see the bishop is now blocked out. So bishop to d4 would be sort of a must line, but now c3, b takes c, b takes c, and bishop to c5, retreating rook to b1, and still with opportunities to go and kingside castling. So this was a good line also for white, but Hikaru, after the move b4, he played the move b3. Still, nothing went wrong here for Hikaru, as he has now this fixed pawn structure. As I said, in the first game, he made a little bit the position too open for the bishops. Now he's trying to keep the position compact. As I said, he doesn't have the bishop here. You have to really keep a firm position here. So b3, fixing the position, bishop to a6, and now g3. Again, slight inaccuracy by Hikaru. He should have proceeded here with the move knight to f5, because now this line leads basically into a draw. Knight to f5 solves the positional problems here for white, I believe, because g6 is not a possibility to kick away this very nice outpost as knight, as after h6, g6, and maybe f takes or h takes g6, we have always the opportunity to play a very dangerous knight to h6. So now, wherever the knight comes, we'll simply take it. Knight to d4 or knight to f4 will simply kick away this knight. We don't want to have this outpost, as I said. After knight to f4, we'll simply take e takes f4. And still, I think this is a better position for white, although black has the bishop pair. But now I think we can simply proceed with e5. This is a good move. Even kingside castling or queenside castling are possible, because the knights are protecting the center very well. And now after queenside castling, I think if we get out of the range of the bishop here on a6, then we could also proceed with the move d4. So if we manage to connect these two pawns in the center, these bishops would be out of game. They would be kicked away by this pawn-centric control that white is built here. So that's why here, after the move bishop to a6, g3 allows now Magnus to go into a very, very aggressive line with f5. So here Hikaru plays rook to h4. Very interesting idea, as he wants to cover his e4. In the game, f4 was played by Magnus. We have bishop to d2, and now knight to d4. Knight takes d4. We have queen to d4, attacking the rook on a1, and now rook to c1. Now f takes g3. Very important move. After f takes g2, queen to g1, attacking the king. And now, after trades of queens, we have now really an alpha 0 stockfish endgame here. So what we have here is, of course, this opposite colored bishops, and in 90%, I believe, these games are draw. So, but there is one problem here in black's position. White has really a firm pawn structure here. Of course, most of these pawns are on light squares. So, but in order to make something happen, I'm not sure how to attack these pawns. You should go something like bishop to c8, bishop to g4, maybe, and then bishop to d1. This could be the only path for white to lose this game, if you allow this bishop to come on d1. On the other hand, black has several problems here. There is this pawn on c7, a5, b4, and also here the pawn on e5. So there are really clear targets. The pawns are all over the board. They are really split pawns, and although white has here a 1 versus 2 situation, there is not a good way how to create here a pass pawn situation, as your king is here, so there are always these tactical threats with the rooks on the g and h file. So I want you maybe even to stop the video here and try really find a drawish plan here for black. How to make a draw here. Here in the game, rook to e6 play by Magnus. Let's move a little bit faster. Here rook to f8, rook to e1, bishop to c8, and now after the move h6, g6, here bishop to g5, rook to e8, rook to h2, and now Magnus makes, I think, a decisive mistake. Rook to f3, which is a huge problem. There is, as I said, when we trade off, what we shouldn't allow here is to trade off the rooks. That's the main problem. If we trade off the rooks, then the bishop will come here very, very actively into the game and will simply go after the pawns. As I said, black doesn't have this kind of opportunities, as black can only get to d1 somehow and attack these pawns, because it's a much healthier pawn structure here by white. So what never black should allow is a simplification line to trade off the rooks. Here Magnus played the move rook to f3. A better idea here is to play c5. After something like maybe rook to f2, we will play c4, simply splitting pawns. After something like d takes c4 or b takes c4, again black would have a clear target, so it would be sort of weakened pawn structure. After d takes c4, we would simply have bishop to b7 and attacking the e4. At least white needs to worry about something in this particular lines, even if after here b takes c4, again bishop to d7, again white needs to defend somehow. So this was the only line that helped out Magnus Carlsen, but he made the mistake and he forced here after rook to h2, rook to f3, and he forced a trade of rooks here after king to e3, and now he makes a decisive mistake and he played king to f7. As I said, in 90% of this opposite colored bishops and games, they are draw, but now after king to f7, rook to f1, simply trading off the rooks, and now you see the clear path of this bishop. Both of these pawns are on dark squares. They're really an object of white here. We can really attack them easily. Here in the game c5, simply king to e7, and now bishop to e5. Hikaru grabs another pawn. We have king to d7, and now bishop to f6, bishop to b7, and now king to f4, bishop to c6. And in this position, Magnus Carlsen resigned, because what to do here? Let's see the possible problems. What white is trying to do is to sneak in with the king. In order to prevent this idea, you have to play, instead of this bishop to c6, you have to play something like king to e6. But when you retreat here, when you leave the d8 square unprotected, then we have simply bishop to d8, and we simply grab this pawn. So we would have then 2 pass pawns, and it's a lost endgame here for black. So black could here play king to e8 in order to make something happen, in order to prevent this idea to with the bishop to go to d8. But now king to e5, and will simply go after this pawn again. So you cannot push the pawn. That's the main problem. You cannot attack the pawn. As I said, it's simply too late here to go with your bishops all over the board. White is simply faster. White will go after this pawn, and as I said, in this position, Magnus Carlsen resigned. So as I said, the only way to make a draw here is this sacrificing line, c5. Let's see, rook to f2, and now c4. This creates further weaknesses, at least in white's position. At least white needs to worry about something. This is really a thematic endgame technique here. So as I said, rook to f2. After the trades of rooks, Magnus makes this mistake, goes to the f file. He is not supposed to allow this bishop to come into the game after bishop to d8. It's a losing endgame here for black. Incredible game with many great thematic things in this burn defense. You see how problematic this opening can be. With tiny little inaccuracies, you make such a bad game, and this can also happen to the world champion Magnus Carlsen. Great game by both sides. This is really an incredible match game. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed to analyze this game, because there have many things for us that we can see even in this really complex middle game. So Okay, I hope that you enjoyed this game. I enjoyed it really a lot. If you want to see more of the day 3, here is also the link with some more chess games from this tournament. And if you like this content, you can also subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best of